People have visited the US. What is your what the America story? Story 1. I'm English and visited California about a decade ago. We'd been staying in a small town called Mariposa while we visited Yosemite National Park for a couple of days. My friends had continued their road trip onto Vegas while I had to head back down to LA and get the plane home. I was waiting for a bus at the station in Mariposa. It was raining, uncharacteristic for April, I was told. A pickup truck pulls up. The first thing I see is a huge dog sitting in the passenger seat. Then, an old lady, I'm guessing around 60, peers over and asks me, "Where are you heading?" I told her I was going to LA and she said, "Me too, get in," and started pushing the dog into the back. Partly out of politeness but mostly out of curiosity, I jumped in. I think it was around a 3 to 4 hour drive to LA. As we set off, she starts listing all the things we have to do before we get there. Visit her friend to move a trailer, visit another friend who has broken her ankles to feed her dogs, and visit a place where she could go do her taxes. That should only take a few hours. It was going to take at least double the journey time. Now in my head I was saying, heck no, I don't want to do any of that, but I found myself saying, okay. She was super happy. After about half an hour, we arrived at her friend's house. She had 2 huge dogs and I found myself carrying an industrial-sized bag of dog pellets to fill a huge automatic feeder. While my new old lady friend went to use the bathroom, the slightly larger woman that owned the house showed me photos of her daughter and asked me what I thought of her. She said she was pretty, which wasn't a complete lie. She told me she didn't have a boyfriend and I nodded and smiled awkwardly. Then she said, "So you're going all the way down to LA with old lady friend, are you?" I saw my chance. Actually, I think it might be better if I get the train. Do you know when the next one is? Slightly larger woman checked the train times, then she hollered out, "Old lady friend, he needs to get the train. The next one's in 20 minutes. Old lady friend rushes, as fast as a 60-year-old can, back into the room, shows no signs of being perturbed, says we better get going then, and we quickly get in the truck. It looks as though we may miss the train. Old lady friend is literally speeding down the road. She turns to me all of a sudden and says, "Has anyone ever told you about Jesus?" I tell her yes, that my parents have told me all about him. That doesn't put her off giving me a little speech and I don't say anything to stop her. I just smile and thank her. As we get closer to where the station is supposed to be, she winds down her window with some lights and shouts to a surprised dude in the street, "Where's the station?" Before accelerating hard and speeding around the bend in the direction the guy pointed to, we get to the station and there's time to spare. There's a bit of a queue at the ticket booth and I say thanks and take my place in line. After a few minutes, I reach the front and buy my ticket. I turn towards the platform and feel a tap on my shoulder. Old lady friend is standing there, apple in hand, a big smile on her face. She presses the apple into my hands and places her hands around mine. She bends her head in prayer. What she said, I can't remember. I was too busy looking at all the people staring at me. An old lady whose head barely reached my chest holding my hands. Amen. Without another word, she walks away. The train arrives and I leave. Yep, that sounds like America to me. They've just been freedomed. God bless. Story 2. Was a French exchange teenager in Cali, summer of '97. I was young and missed the field trip bus to Disneyland from San Diego, so I did something pretty stupid. I hitchhiked to go there by myself. The dude who took me looked like a plaincloth cop, but a good buddy. When he heard I was French, he told me to never hitchhike in the USA because it's pretty dangerous. Plus, people could assume I'm a serial killer. So I boasted, "Look at you. You don't think I'm a serial killer. Not that dangerous looking or you're careless." He told me to open the glove box in front of me. There was a supposedly loaded Desert Eagle inside. He dropped me at the bus station and insisted on giving me $10 for a ticket even though I had cash and waited for me to go on the bus. I still don't know if he was a plaincloth angel or the Zodiac. Story 3. Was in northern New York, near Buffalo, and a waitress overheard that I was headed back to the Pacific Ocean. She asked where I was going and I said Vancouver. "No, honey. Vancouver is in Canada and that is on the Atlantic Ocean." I said, "Canada is from sea to sea just like America." She replied, "No, that's not right. Only America's from sea to sea." The combination of her being absolutely sure about something and her total ignorance was surprising enough, but the fact that she felt she should basically interrupt our conversation by telling me I'm wrong about what ocean I live beside was weird. Psst, guess what? This video is sponsored by none other than me and my awesome crew at Rufus Rugs. We're the masters of creating custom, hand-tufted rugs that truly capture who you are. Whether you're looking to turn one of our intriguing thumbnails into a rug, for purely academic reasons, of course, or you're eager to transform your room with some epic anime-inspired designs, we can get it done for you. These are all handmade by me and the team from Canada. No dropshipping BS here. Real, handmade custom rugs by me and my friends. Click the first link in the description to learn more. Story 4. I'd never been out of Australia before. In Australia, only farmers and cops have guns, and some criminals, I guess, so I had never seen a gun that wasn't in a cop's holster in my entire 30-year existence. We go to the US for our honeymoon and have the honor and privilege of visiting a Walmart. The guns are just on the shelf. You can touch them. A fellow Aussie friend who was with us at the time asked the cashier if she could hold one. He looked at her as if she had asked if it was okay to breathe the store's air. Can I hold one? This big one? She asked, incredulous. Sure, if you want to, the guy said, confused and bored at the same time. She picked up this big gun. Sorry, not a gun, okay? Don't know what it was. It was about the size of a shotgun but was bulkier, and was getting us to take photos of her with it. If I had a gun like that at home and walked outside of my house with it, someone would drive past and see me in about 10 seconds. They would call the cops, which would take about 30 seconds. The police station is just up the road, so I estimate a cop car would arrive in about 3 minutes. And it would take about 10 seconds for a cop to ask me politely to jump in his car and come for a nice chat down at the police station. But it would be fun for 4 minutes. Story 5. When I went to Florida, I was stopped by the police for jaywalking. I protested that the road was clear and therefore safe to cross. He said, "Don't know how you do it in your country, but here in the US, we take road safety seriously." I guessed, I explained I was from England and my only knowledge of jaywalking was from Lethal Weapon 3 and that I believed it was just a made-up law that they used in the movie to sass people. He chuckled and said, "That's a great movie. I prefer the first." I agreed and said it was by far the best. After a brief chat about the entire Lethal Weapon saga, he said, "In the future, make sure you use the crossings." I agreed but asked in a pretty decent South African accent, "What if I have diplomatic immunity?" He chuckled, nodded his head, and pointed to the crossing and said, "Cross there. Enjoy your vacation." And off he went. It was the highlight of my holiday. I don't think people get stopped for jaywalking often, if not at all, so he's one unlucky guy for that. Story 6. I was at an all-you-can-eat buffet with a soft-serve ice cream machine. As kids, we thought we were being little pigs by swirling as high as we possibly could while our parents weren't looking or they certainly would have stopped us. The guy after us grabbed a full-size drink tumbler and filled it up with ice cream. No shame at all. No childlike glee at making the mother of all Sundays. I suspect now it was something he did regularly. The first rule of all-you-can-eat buffet. There are no rules. Only the strong survive. Story 7. I was in Vegas with 3 Danish friends and we were very hungover. 3 of us, not the driver. We decided to go for a drive in the convertible. After 15 minutes, a police officer on a bike drives up next to us and just stares into the car. This lasted like 5 to 10 seconds, so the driver turns his head and asks, "Anything wrong, officer?" The officer replied in a super angry tone, "Keep your freaking eyes on the freaking road." He continued to follow us for about a mile, just staring at us. Super creepy. Also had bad police experiences in Florida, New York, and San Diego. Story 8. When I went to the US the first time and ordered a meal from Burger King, ordering a large fry, Coke, and a Whopper, I was blown away by the size of it all. Each item was larger than the same item back home. I was already like, what the heck? But then the cashier said I could have a second Whopper for $1. Again, I was like, what? Sign me up. Another time while I was drinking in Daytona, I went to a restaurant and the woman kept refilling my drink, again and again. Being a bit shy, I did not tell her to stop and expected the bill with $15 for sodas, but then I found out the refills were free. What? Free refills? I'd only seen that at places like Subway, but so many restaurants in the US had free refills. I love the US for restaurants and food in general. The portions are massive and very reasonably priced. Story 9. I've told this story on Reddit before, but my biggest moment was in the fall of 2005. Google Earth had just come out and my colleague at the university lab and I were looking at it. She was a blonde bombshell from San Diego and I'm a portly Indian boy. When I showed her Mumbai, my home city, she was blown away. "You have buildings? Look, there's an airport. Oh my god, you have cars? How the heck do you think we get around?" I asked. Her reply still rings in my head. Not walking, not cows, not elephants, not bicycles, not horse-drawn carts. She said camels. If I ever saw a camel in Mumbai, I'd stop everything I'm doing and say, "Holy crap, that's a freaking camel." To be fair, a ton of Americans don't know the difference between India and the Middle East and think, well, it's 2023 here, it's 1876 in the rest of the world. If you think the US needs a better geography program, leave a like in this video and subscribe to the channel. Story 10. First night in LA, I watched a stolen cop car and a million cop cars flew past me down Hollywood Boulevard at 60 miles an hour at 10 p.m. Then I turned and walked back into the Thai restaurant where I watched the fugitive get pit maneuvered and shot live in the news via helicopter chase cam. The dude sitting next to us was excited to tell us we had officially experienced LA. Over-the-top car chases, action chase cam news, neon lights in Hollywood, an Asian restaurant that made me feel like I was in an art film. He was right. Story 11. I went to the States for several months in July of 2002. I thought things were going to be pretty tense with what had happened the year before. For some background about me, I'm Australian but was living in Japan at the time and was living in the US in NC and traveling with a maid at the time. I had 2 WTF moments in New York City. The first was when I visited the site of where the towers had stood to see a big hole in the ground and found that so many of the surrounding buildings had been damaged to the point of being unsafe and either needing major repair or demolition. But the big thing for me was the messages that people had written around the main construction site where the towers had been. There were makeshift wooden walls to keep the public out and people had written messages on the wall. At first, all I could see was the hate. There were a lot of very hateful, vengeful messages written on those walls. I don't blame anyone for writing those in anger. I genuinely hope most of the people who wrote those messages didn't truly mean what they meant and were writing them out of fear and hate they had at the time. There were messages of sorrow for those that had been lost when the towers came down and messages for gratitude for those that had helped. The ones that stood out the most were those of love. "I love you, Daddy," was scrawled about 1.5 feet off the ground in the handwriting of a child. I'm a grown man, but when I saw that, I wept. My girlfriend at the time came over and saw what I was looking at and did the same. I'm not sure of the story behind it, but the connotation of the sight made me so sad. The second was the second hour that I'd been in New York. We stayed in the Red Roof Inn in the 5th, and my mate and I had been driving all day and declared that it was time for a drink. It was 11 p.m., and all my life I'd heard that New York was the city that never sleeps. I'd been lied to. We walked down to Times Square, and there was barely a soul around. We went to the police box in the middle of the square to get a photo with the police there. They were cool. I asked them if they knew a place where we could get a drink, and they pointed out that there was a hole-in-the-wall bar off a street to our right. I'm a little fuzzy in the directions, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the bar. But the officers weren't wrong. It was a bar that seemed barely wide enough for 3 burly men to stand shoulder to shoulder across, but we went in, found a table at the back, and hunkered down with our beers. I looked at the walls, and there were so many photos of Muhammad Ali back in the day in his prime. There were a few photos of other boxers, but not as many as Ali. I noticed that in most of the photos was a bloke that looked like an aged version of the man walking up and down the bar while we were there. I stopped him and asked who he was and why he was in the photos with Ali. Turns out he was his coach or trainer or the like. I was stunned. He kindly stopped and sat down with us for about an hour, and we talked about his past and also what we were doing in New York. I wished my dad had been there. He was a huge fan of Ali and would have had so many good questions to ask him. New York City was a good place for me. I'm looking forward to the day I can go back for another visit. Story 12. Not my story, but my mom's. And instead of visiting, it was more like an immigration story. So it's the early 1980s, and my mom's plane touches down at LAX from Tokyo. She was collecting her luggage and waiting for her friend to pick her up. A Hare Krishna, which she had never seen before, came up to her and asked her, in English, if she could donate a few dollars. My mom, who only had a few yen and a poor grasp of English, tried to explain to the Hare Krishna that she couldn't understand him and that she had just arrived in the United States. The moment she started talking to him in Japanese, he just gave her some of the money he had and went on his merry way, leaving her at the luggage carousel confused. Story 13. Pretty much every question I was asked made me react that way. Do you have running water in New Zealand? Do you have glass windows? Do you have chickens over there? Do you guys have apples? That was asked while they were holding an apple with a sticker saying it was imported from New Zealand. Why don't you go live in the mainland? I found out after a while that they meant Australia. Also that it's just expected that everyone will exchange their gifts and gift exchange cards are included in the gifts. Here you get a gift and you have to like it, even if you don't. Of all places to think poorly of, that girl chose New Zealand. Up in the schools, man. Story 14. Late to the party, but maybe someone can be entertained by this. My first trip to the US was in 2012. My first stop was Chicago, visiting a friend of my American girlfriend who was studying there. So we went out on the first evening to some Asian place and I ordered a Coke as I wasn't 21 yet. In Germany, you can accumulate quite a bill when drinking a lot of beverages in restaurants. I was not going to drink more than what I needed for the meal. Mind you, we also don't get free water here, which I think is awesome practice in the US. What is often done when you don't want the waiter or waitress to ask you for another order of drinks is to leave some of the beverage in the glass, enough that it clearly is not just left over but could still be used to satisfy your thirst. This works reasonably well in Germany. Now back to the Asian restaurant in Chicago. I did exactly as described above, but still, the waiter came and asked if I wanted another Coke. I thought to myself, well, why not? And ordered. He then took my glass, which still had this considerable amount of Coke in it. So I interrupted him and said, wait, no. To which he replied, no Coke? And I said, yes, Coke, but this one as well, which seemed to totally confuse the kind waiter. I then said, I would like to order another Coke, but I would also like to finish this one, but was interrupted by my girlfriend, who by that point was laughing already and sent the waiter off, leaving me reasonably upset before she could explain to me that non-alcoholic beverages are refilled for free in the US. I knew right that moment that America was everything I ever hoped it would be. See you again soon, you magnificent mess of a country. Story 15. I'm from Australia. Oh my god, everywhere I looked there was an eagle. Eagle statues, eagle pictures, allusions to eagles. It was nuts. I grew to love it though. Also, two things that were strange to me. People handing you CDs but not advising you that you had to pay for them and how much. Also, people wanting to be tipped for offering the most basic level of human decency like giving someone directions if they look lost. So weird. There was one guy who tried to force directions on us, but actually we were just trying to figure out where we wanted to eat. When we politely declined, he started shouting and pointing at us and telling people we were racist. I've never experienced anything like that before, and it was terrifying. Story 16. A few years back, I took a cruise that left out of San Diego. I'm from Canada and had never been further into the States than New York City. It was pretty late when we got to the hotel, so we decided to just go to the Denny's down the road. We first had our minds blown by the portion sizes. We have Denny's in Canada, but our plates are much smaller. I'm a big guy who'd been traveling all day and was hungry as hell, and I couldn't even finish my meal. The next day was the real moment, though. I head down to the hotel for breakfast for my first ever pancakes from a machine, and notice on my way in through the door that there's a woman who is so large she has to sit in 2 chairs. Wow. Okay, that's sad, but I've seen it once before in Canada. Then I noticed 2 other people doing the same thing. Not sitting at the same table or anything, just 3 people. Completely unrelated to each other besides the fact that they're so fat they can't sit in 1 chair and need a second for backup. What the heck, America? Seriously? Story 17. I was cycling through Oregon and it was a hot day, blistering hot. We're 15 miles from the nearest town in a residential neighborhood, we're out of the water, and we've hunkered down under a tree for a little shade to make the final push to hydration. There are cars driving past every now and then. There's no way for them to know we're out of water, we just look like tired cyclists. This punk kid and his girlfriend drive slowly past us with a raced pickup truck. Must have been 17 or so, and definitely gave me some Johnny Lawrence vibes. We see the truck slowly come to a stop, reverse, and stop in front of us. Inwardly, I'm thinking, damn it, this sucks enough already. Hey man, you guys look parched. Now I've got this cooler with cold waters. Do you want some? Not how I expected the conversation to go. Anyways, the kid goes to the cooler, realizes he's only got 2, comes back and tosses them to us saying, I've only got 2, but I've got a few more in the house. I'll be right back. Doesn't ask us, just jumps in the truck. A couple of minutes later, he's back with 4 more, gives them to us, wishes us a great ride and leaves. I've done a lot of riding through Canada and Europe, and nobody has ever done something like that. It was a prime example of true selfless American hospitality. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy what was the best "you have no power here" moments you have ever seen. Story 3 got me on the edge of my seat. See you in that video.